great photo of like a bowl of ramen on Instagram or something. It's not as good as actually going there and eating it. So I think concept cars are like that nowadays, and we always talk about presence of concept cars. You can't really capture that in any type of digital, media. My name is Alex Shen. I'm a chief designer at Calty Design. We're an advanced design studio, so a lot of our work is not really intended for the public consumption. We could do great images now, we could tell great stories and videos and so forth, but seeing it in person is a whole different, I think, experience. And we like the fact that it seems like, post-COVID, it seems like attendance has slowly gone up and people want to go out and see things in person. They want to make sure it's not AI built or created. It's actually a real product, I think what we decide to release to the public are things that we want to talk about maybe in the next 4 to 5 years. We want to show what the public, what we're working on and what they could see in the market potentially. But yeah, most of it is just kind of early studies. Maybe those ideas aren't completely hashed out yet. We're still kind of in the works, like our menu or our ingredients still in the mix. But some of them do, if we look back years later, it's like, oh, that was a good one. Maybe we should have shown that one. That happens, and time always tells how good of a product you design. Years later we look back, and some are, we look back and say, that's a good thing we didn't show that one. But there are times when we say, yeah, we probably should have gone forward with this one. So I remember those 80s and 90s show cars, and they were just wild dream cars. That's when I was starting to go through, design school, and they were very inspiring, and they're like, I think back then, the future, even going back to the 60s and so forth, the future was wide open, right? There's a lot of technology back then that wasn't available at the time. Like even a telephone was kind of a wow factor, or a display was a wow factor and so forth. So, but now, technology has caught up so quickly. And, a lot of these concept cars that we see now, if you go to, the Chinese auto shows, they look like concepts, but you could buy them, Technology has done a great job of catching up. And maybe that's why it's kind of difficult for us to wow people in that kind of romantic driving vehicle sense, right? But I think there's other ways to do that now. We have to do it with a little bit more finesse now, rather than it's like, hey, check out these fins and rockets and so forth, right? So it's I think the consumers are a little bit more sophisticated now. They're looking for a little bit more, thoughtful content, I guess. I think when we started that, we kind of looked at every generation of Supra from Mark 1 to 4. Calty used to get to select a project we want to work on every year. So, we actually say, hey, why don't we bring the Supra back? And it wasn't a Supra back then, it became a sports car. So, and we did this car, we presented it to Akio-san in Japan. We put it in Gran Turismo, so we thought the car was, you're supposed to drive these sports cars. It should be visceral. It's not enough just to put a car there, right? So we put it in the machine, or put it in Gran Turismo with, Polifini's help. And he drove it, and he goes, oh, wow, this is great, And probably 5 minutes later, our top boss back then, he said, give me a minute, I'll be right back. And then he said, yeah, he said, go ahead and make a show car. So that's what we thought as far as it was gonna go. We hadn't heard anything about, any production plans in the future, because I think in Japan at that time, sports cars wasn't anything on their maps at the moment, because it's, they're always money losing. We had a pretty good image at the time already. We're getting youthful buyers already. So then, yeah, that's how it spawned. And then eventually we were notified, it's like, hey, can you guys work on the production version? Like, oh, okay. So I don't know if behind the scenes was planned, but at least from our perspective, it was a concept car from the heart. And it was shown to our top management, and they loved it, and it became a concept car, right? It's almost like a revolutionary change, right? So, but the thing that kind of kept it as a Supra was kind of the spirit of what it's supposed to do, right? And the spirit changed as it kind of, version by version, it changed from, like a Celica Supra to a pure sports car. So, we kind of kept growing that, and, what should it be next kind of question. And that's why we never went back. I mean, there's aspects of it that we kind of pepper in a sense. You know, that's why it's an FR. I think some of the main things we thought it had to be an FR. It had to have kind of an inline engine bonnet. At that time, there was no engine developed, so we thought the bonnet should feel like an FR. We thought the views of the Supra had to at least kind of evoke some kind of a connection to the previous one, right? But not literally like photocopy one from the previous and then making it. You know, I have some favorites, so I like, you know, I still like, you know, Gen 1, Gen 2. Gen 2 was like my dream car in high school. It's like, man, that thing is just, it looks like a concept car, you know, that you could buy. But, you know, we try to avoid that from a Toyota perspective. I think we're always trying to push forward and innovate and try to show people a hint of the future and with a little bit of spirit of the past, you know. So that's why you don't see us going backwards too often. But hopefully everybody could feel the spirit of what we're trying to do from previous models, because a lot of our cars, a lot of our models have a lot of history, right? And we don't want to waste that, but we want to overexploit it either, you know what I mean? I think people don't realize there's so many elements on a car that requires just experience and knowledge of how to put things together. I don't know, you know, it's like anything. If you're a pattern cutter, you gotta know the small tricks and stuff like that. And you only learn that through building cars. So yeah, I think it's pretty, I remember my first full size, it was pretty challenging. You know, it was pretty mental. Like there's so many things that you have to figure out. But you know, we always have good mentors that will tell you, hey, you know, you might want to think about this. Your transition here is not that great. There's some theories about that. So through every one, the people you work with, you start learning all these techniques. You just kind of build your confidence in your tool chest and your knowledge and wisdom. Hopefully you get one out from, you know, concept to production and you see it driving on the road. You know, that's always the dream. So there's something we get to complete. Although at a concept car stage, we still get to finish it, pay a lot of attention on the details, work with, you know, builders, finally finish it, and then show it to the public. It's almost like a practice getting into a real production vehicle, because there's a lot more involved working with engineers and so forth. Lots of late night meetings with engineering and moving, you know, micromillimeters and so forth. But with concept cars, like I said, it's like practice. It's just, but you get to finish. A lot of this, if you're just sketching, we don't get to even a clay model, it's not finished, right? We're not building parts. We're not seeing the parts in 3D. We're not building, you know, backside engineering and stuff like that. So I think it's important. I think it's important to kind of continue that effort for us to keep building better cars, because it's just reps. You know what I mean? I think designers need the reps. It seems like the playground shrunk a little bit, but it makes it more challenging and exciting for us to come up with something unique. Yeah. You know, is it harder? I think it is, but it's also, you know, we have new technology as well. We have, you know, young, bright designers that come in and have big ideas, and you know, we could keep pushing forward and make exciting concept cars still. Yeah. When the EV technology came and it's exploding, and as it grows, it kind of reminds me of when we had, you know, the hybrid technology come at first, you know. And that was always the question, is like, hey, should it look like something completely different, or should it look like a car, you know, with the proper hood and you know, proper windshield angle, and does it need to be long dash to axle? And those are all the questions that we explore, right? So I think with the platform kind of architecture, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, you could draw anything, and which is cool, but you could also, I mean, the bad part is also you could draw anything, right? So it's kind of hard to decide, hey, what's the correct direction? I feel like maybe like the hybrid technology we've done in the past, we kind of veered back to, hey, it should just look like a proper car, and this is what people are used to. And maybe there's a magic ratio, a magic proportion that people are comfortable with and they feel good about. So I think it's kind of time will tell if that's going to be a good thing or not. And you're starting to see EVs that, you know, are bringing back a lot of traditional proportions. And I think there's something romantic about a bonnet with the engine inside that people can imagine. And those ratios probably just stuck through time, right? And that kind of sets the foundation of what a car should look like. Obviously there's new ratios, cab forward and so forth, but generally, there's still 4 wheels. Although we made a 6-wheeler in the last show, but there's still 4 wheels, and there's a sense of stability, foundation that the car sits on. And there's some kind of mathematic formula that's hidden in there that we need to kind of incorporate to make a good looking car. And I think the reason for the 6 wheels is it creates a better floor entry egress on the back. It doesn't have these gigantic wheels and big, wheelhouse intrusion and all that. So that was designed for the interior. So I think that's what's kind of very genius about that. I think people look at it as like, a 6-wheel car, that's kind of wacky, but it's truly functional. It's truly kind of a new take on what luxury space is. I focus mainly on exterior, so I know when you start looking at interiors of self-driving cars, like the anchor is the steering wheel. Once you take that away, and the cool part about driving is you have control of this kind of machine, right? So what happens after that is gone, or should it be gone? So there's all these kind of questions about it. And how do people feel? Will they feel safe about being in an autonomous car? It's like, and how do you move that forward? So I think those are the big challenges. I think for exterior, every time we get some type of autonomous type of design project, we kind of don't focus too much on what that looks like. It's other than the fact that you have to create a better space. It could be autonomous in any way, right? I mean, I've thought about this before. I mean, everything we create at some point is going to end up, in a junkyard or destroyed or crushed, because it is a temporary piece, right? So I think when I was a younger designer, I would feel very crushed, like, oh my God, they're gonna destroy this car. But I think now it's just more of a reality. I think for us, the better the car, the more meaning it has connecting to maybe an iconic car like perhaps Supra or like LC, LFLC and so forth. The tendency is it ends up in a museum in Japan. And they'll keep it there for a long time. So, that's the motivation, is like if you create a really cool, iconic car, and it becomes a symbol of something or a symbol of success at some point. And I think that will be maintained and it'll be displayed, and, it'll kind of connect the history of maybe, Mark V is going to be a part of that now. So that's the motivation. But I do get notices when they say, hey, this one, we're gonna have to crush this one. And you get a little bit of sadness, but it's okay.